Hello and welcome every one of you to this first live webinar with Abhishek Jajodia of Boring Commerce. Welcome Abhishek. And this is a webinar where we'll be discussing D2C and how all of us as founders can solve for India. We will begin this in another 1 or 2 more minutes, but in the meantime, Abhishek, maybe you can offer a quick introduction before we jump into the session.
Thanks for the invite, Vishnu, and very happy to be here kicking off an excellent initiative by yourself. Just a small introduction of myself. I've been co-founder of Boring Commerce for about 4 years now, and we essentially work with aspiring D2C brands who are looking to grow further, helping them in traversing through the journey of demystifying their understandings of performance marketing, technology, and growth of the business across the entire spectrum. In our short stint, we have been able to work with some very ambitious, very high quality founders across the entire country, which has given us a great amount of perspective and understanding and the knowledge of how an entire ecosystem of the D2C infrastructure in India has evolved over the last decade, half a decade. And even before that, I have spent about 3 to 4 years working on a few small labeled brands of my own, which we used to sell on Amazon and our own infrastructure and all, where we managed everything in-house. So that gave us a lot of perspective in terms of managing the entire ecosystem of D2C and helped us to actually evolve the setup, which will set things up.
Wonderful. So we are still having more people joining in, and I would love to hear from all of you today in this first webinar on solving for India. So as a participant, whatever questions that you have and whatever you have in mind about scaling your D2C brand, or generally to understand anything about D2C, post your question and we'll be getting to all the questions as the session is over. Hope you guys are all doing great on a Friday evening, that also on April 1st. It's glad to have all of you here. By the way, Abhishek is also working with me along with the team at SuperCluster in scaling the brands that we operate and the ones that we'll be bringing into the HOB. And a short introduction of myself. I know I'm hosting the webinar and a lot of you would already know who I am. Been a digital marketer for almost 12 plus years, spent 4 years in the US, came back, ran an agency, managed more than 150 crores in ad spends for clients worldwide, and built our first D2C brand last year that has scaled up quite well. Now more than 15-20,000 customers on that brand, and launched a couple more brands that are generating close to several thousand orders a month. And we got into acquisitions and are in advanced stage discussions with multiple brands to onboard them into our HOB platform. Fortunately, being surrounded by investors and digital marketing moguls, I raised my first round of capital also on November 21. Without too much further ado, let us dive into the agenda of today's call, which is to decoding digital marketing for D2C founders. So Abhishek, in your journey, I know you have worked with the likes of Juicy Chemistry and even worked with brands like Lotus, Earthridden, Ilana Organics, and you name all of the beauty and personal care brands. You've done some work with them. What has been your experience working with these founders, and how have you figured out their 0 to 1 in terms of getting their revenue from 15-20 lakhs to several crores a month? What has been your secret sauce, and what are the core KPIs? What is really the 0 to 1, and what are the KPIs that you have set for yourself and the founders, and what should people measure?
Oh, thanks for that, Vishnu. Frankly, I do understand and I do agree that, the kind of setup which is required for a D2C business to flourish and grow in the entire ecosystem has been a very strongly evolving ecosystem over the last decade. This is something which I have had as a deeper conversation with a lot of founders who we have interacted with and worked with on a very close level. in the fact that if you consider it from a standpoint of a business perspective, a lot of businesses, say it is in the manufacturing industry or the technology industry, has been around for a good number of decades, which has allowed them to optimize their business operations quite extensively, whereas e-commerce or D2C as an entire infrastructure has taken a little bit of a time to evolve. A good number of founders who we have worked with, and both successful and highly successful founders, have had a few caveats in them which have been very, very strongly discerning. A strong product proposition initiates the entire objective and the modus operandi on which the entire system operates on. But at the same time, a systematic approach towards growing the business coming from the founder end becomes a very, very important factor. From a D2C perspective, when you are considering a business going from 0 to 1 stage, there are a few launch pillars or a few pillars which I personally believe that we need to have established from a macro perspective. If you divide them into two core fundamentals, one is from the demand side and the second is from the supply side. The supply side is going to be managed by us, which is supposed to be part of the inherent infrastructure which the business builds. And the demand side is something which we do as part of our activities to generate the kind of revenue which we draw. And from the supply side, we have a few things which are very important, like a strong product, a solid supply chain system, solid business administration, and all of those things combined. And from a demand side, we work towards creating a strong brand personality, solid media production, infrastructure, which will enable the business to actually have a visual communication setup, and also then growing in terms of revenue and allowing customers to actually experience our products. From a micro perspective, I do have a couple of things which I personally feel are very important for a brand to go from 0 to 1. And these are sort of like the pillars from a launch perspective, which I believe in. One is excellence in product. Product excellence is something which is very important. Creating high engagement media is also very, very important in today's date, predominantly owing to the fact that we are utilizing the systems of social media, social commerce, as well as interactive media, which is going to get customers onto a platform where they can buy our product. Engagement and high engagement media and engagement with the consumer using these platforms is going to be extremely important. An airtight digital platform or a technology stack which is going to ensure that we are able to grow through the business really, really fast is something which is extremely important. A focus on building a community and a strong customer base is also relatively very important. Systems today are quite helpful in allowing us to actually establish those systems. And in a way, we will be able to leverage out of that to building a strong community of consumers. Then comes the entire ecosystem of being able to excel in supply chain management. You will only be as good as how well you will be able to supply to your customers at the right time, in the right conditions, and at the right price. And also scale. When consideration comes of scale, it is very important that we are able to facilitate anywhere between 10 orders a day to about 10,000 orders a day without having to flinch or without having to compromise on any kind of setups. Then one of the foremost and most important aspect, I think personally, starts to actually overtake absolutely everything is going to be advertising with a plan. Now, the differentiator which has come through, which has given D2C brands a massive amount of leverage in the entire industry, entire setup is the fact that we will be able to advertise on our own terms, leveraging of the platforms which we have to reach out to end consumers. Earlier, it was not possible for smaller brands to actually reach out to, say, put a hoarding on the streets, which will cost lakhs of rupees, but rather now it is very, very easy for brands to actually leverage out of the advertising platforms out there and go out into the public and get into understanding of how the ecosystem works. So if we are able to conclusively be able to maintain an airtight setup of all of these aspects, this is something which we will be able to scale as a business and consider it as a solid business with a bright future as a process. What are your thoughts on that, Vishnu?
Yes, that is detailed and elaborate of an explanation you gave to that question, Abhishek. So in my view, my experience on building a brand from the scratch and launching it and scaling it to several tens of thousands of customers, we looked at a few key metrics. And it's also important that founders don't overkill it when it comes to what they measure. And at the end of the day, as long as their business is generating revenue and profits and is growing, then they don't need to be bothered unnecessarily about a lot of things that people might go to them with. So from the perspective of KPIs for a D2C founder, uh, in my view, I'm a big fan of retention. That's
Yes.
why across the spectrum, we are keeping retention as the North Star metric, because retention alone can solve for scale. Uh, Customer acquisition costs are shooting through the roof. What I mean by that is with CPMs going up from 50, 60 rupees to 200, 300 rupees in Facebook and Google as a platform. The moat is not how creative they are with advertising or how awesome they are with product development. Today, there are thousands of contract manufacturers in the country and tens of thousands of agencies, I could say, who could go out, replicate the best performing ad and replicate the best performing product in the market and go after the same audience, right? So, as founders, please start measuring for retention and how many customers you are able to retain as a first core metric, and work on multiple initiatives that you can undertake to retain your customer and achieve a 70, 80, 90% retention rate. uh, One might ask, how do I achieve retention? In fact, we had a brainstorming session. I will be releasing a D2C marketing playbook very soon. And to all the participants of this webinar today in Solving for India, I want you to type the word D2C in the LinkedIn comments if you would like to receive the D2C marketing playbook that we are working on, which demystifies and decodes the overall step-by-step process on how you can achieve retention, how you can get the best influencers in the country to work for your brand and promote your brand, and how you can do performance marketing and a whole host of other things. Retention can be driven by making the process of purchase simpler, keeping in touch with your customers by educating them how consistently using your products would enable and benefit them, and sharing with them some case studies on how other customers have benefited by using one of your other products. So getting a customer back into your doors to buy your product, to refer your product to a friend of them is extremely important when it comes to scaling organically. So solve for India and solve for retention and distinguish yourself as a brand uh, without falling into the trap of others copying your product or copying your copies or creatives that you use for advertising. So if you have enough customers as loyalists who are repeatedly buying your product, then you don't need to be bothered about any of these copycats, and you can go on and even outspend all of these other competitors by 2 to 3 times to get your new customers, as you anyways know this is the kind of retention you will be having, and your brand will be profitable if customer buys for the third, fourth, or fifth time. So that's one KPI. I spoke for too long on that. And in my view, it is also the most important thing that
Yeah,
every D2C
absolutely.
founder should focus on, rather than looking at all this advertising cost, because there is only so much control one can put into the cost of advertising and so much optimization that one can do on the landing page, which is all important. It follows. You have to look at the next is the lifetime value of the customer, which also has a retention as the big aspect of it,
Element, yeah.
and then customer acquisition cost. See and figure out how you could optimize your customer acquisition cost. And lastly, I would say the brand advocacy and they call it net promoter score, right?
Yeah.
Where how much a user would rate out of 10 your product and you as a founder. So if you are able to get 8, 9, that means people really love your brand, and you have to capitalize on their love for your brand by asking them to refer their friends to try your product. Uh, and you will be a household brand name in the future in India, solving for India. And as India approaches $100 billion worth of transactions happening in D2C, that also in this next 3 to 4 years, as per multiple research reports, including the most popular Avendas one. I'll be sharing the link to the Avendas If anybody wants the Avendus report link, please post in this LinkedIn stream. Avendus, Avendus. I'll share that to you. On what are all the segments in D2C which are catching up, how you can capitalize on this as an entrepreneur, and what you should know and how grounded you should be, and in order to create a household brand name. So with that, Abhishek, my question is, I know there are several agencies who work, and there is always this problem between founders and agencies where founders keep switching the agencies, and agencies don't like working with founders for more than a certain period of time. I would like to know why do founders keep doing this? Why after a point in time, a lot of founders' expectation starts getting very unrealistic, because advertising is like real estate. Facebook and Google is going to show the ads of those who pay them the most. It's real-time bidding, right?
Right.
So, what is it that keeps brands moving on and on? Is that an advantage for the brands to move from one to other agency or stick to one? Could you share some light on that?
As an agency owner, it is slightly of a gilt-edged sword for me to answer that, but I'll be as honest as possible on that. To be very frank with you, we have had a very good fortune in working with some very, very good founders who have given us a certain kind of elevation in terms of our understanding of the entire ecosystem from their side, from the D2C brand owner's side. And obviously, you know, that kind of a setup and exposure has actually allowed us to also introspect in terms of what actually goes on in the entire founder ecosystem to actually ensure what is the best for their business. No matter what happens, I'm pretty sure that we will always have to agree to the fact that the founder will always have to ensure that, you know, they're taking decisions which are right for the business at every given point of time. But at every stage, there is one core important metric which we need to put into perspective, that, you know, advertisers or agencies are always going to be an extension of the actual team or actual business. And at that point of time, essentially, performance agencies or performance as an entire metric has essentially converted itself into a setup where just because Facebook is able to give you metrics in return for the kind of CPMs you're establishing, there are still multiple layers of perspectives we need to add to the congregation of what is going to be as part of our results. As part of the system which we sort of follow, and the analogies which I've been able to draw with, you know, looking at large scale, high quality, really driven founders, we've been able to see that, you know, a lot of things will actually make a lot of sense when we are looking things in a long-term perspective, owing to the pure fact that, you know, even if you have a marketing manager or a large scale CMO who's going to come on board, he's going to simply take about 2 to 3 months just to come in line with the entire ecosystem of the business. Now, the challenge which comes through predominantly is the fact that, you know, when you are tying yourself up with an agency, and this goes out to almost all the founders and agency owners also, is that when you tie up with an agency, generally the agency is going to come on board with a sales pitch, and B, a little bit of little bit of an edge by asking themselves of to outperform. If I'm going to be doing X today for a client A, then I would want to be doing 2x or 3x or 4x for client A in the subsequent months. And that is the way in which an agency and a D2C brand operates. A good number of times, a lot of situations do come across and do set up in a manner where sustainable growth and exponential growth will marry each other, and sometimes one of the other will be getting mitigated. But at all stages and all circumstances, if a very solid relationship of a D2C founder with his vendors, his associates, his consultants, and his team is going to be established very well, that will be a very strong route to success for the business. And this is something which we've seen multiple times over for brand owners.
Wonderful. That is great to hear from you, Abhishek. As somebody who has first-hand working experience with brands that are today worth, I believe, several hundred crores, right? Many of the ones you've worked with. It would be very insightful for our audience to hear that. Let us take a look at if anybody has asked any questions. Siddhangana has asked how important are for founders to be aware about jargons and financial terms while building a startup. I would say, it is, jargons are jargons and financial terms are what they are. There are a few things, however, a founder should be aware of and be familiar with, which is his cost of goods sold, and make sure that the product is selling at a price that is at least 3 to 4 times from the cost of goods sold, because there are all the other costs involved. So don't jump into the bandwagon and think you'll be able to sell something others are selling at 500 rupees for 300 rupees because it only costs 100 rupees to manufacture, right? So there are a host of other things that are involved to taking a brand from production to the consumer, which is marketing, sales, uh, and the platform at which you sell, the payment gateway charges, the returns you have to be facilitating, the shipping and COD charges, and whatnot, right? So, and it is crucial. Don't try to cut it down. In fact, if you try to cut it down, your brand is not reaching any consumer. In fact, brands that have uh, scaled in this last 3 4 years, if you take Rage Coffee, for example, by Bharat Sethi, one of the most known founders in the D2C space, has spent 2 times more money on marketing than the product cost. That has converted into a huge success for him in gaining him hundreds and thousands of loyalists and fanboys for his coffee, who will be buying the product forever in the rest of the life. His company might have lost money in the first 1 or 2 years, but he has created that cult following with the brand. And now he's getting Virat Kohli to endorse. So that is my answer to you, Siddhangna. And yes, a few people have texted Avendas. We will be sharing that report with you on D2C approaching $100 billion and what are the verticals that are scaling. Kaveri from Refurnisho has asked, if someone has started their brand and wants to spread awareness, what do you suggest would be the best route, influencer marketing versus paid ads? So if you are somebody starting a brand, I would distinguish that into two segments, whether you're starting a brand with a lot of capital or whether you're bootstrapping your brand. If you're bootstrapping and starting a brand with very limited capital, then working with your friends and family and starting with influencers who are small, the ones with 10 to 50,000 followers, by providing a product or your experience and having them give a shout out and a review in their page or channel would be a good starting point. And paid ads is something that you can get started with immediately if you are able to get profitable or positive ROAS. So if your production cost is 30% and you're able to get a 2x of your ad spend as a return on the advertising that you do, then effectively you're profitable by spending 100 rupees. You're getting 200 rupees worth of sales, in which your product cost will be 60 rupees. You will have 30-40 rupees to cover for the shipping, COD, and the other costs that are involved, and you can sustainably scale. If your product is so unique, differentiated, and is addressing a problem that not many people are going after, then you will be able to achieve that. Even though this was a very common reality 3-4 years ago, with every brand getting 4x, 5x ROA, it has started to become increasingly rare, as within a category like skincare, for example, there are 100 brands who are competing to reach the same user, making the cost of advertising extremely expensive. So if you have a product that is differentiated and clearly distinguished, and you can communicate it to the users, the value prop of your product and how it stands out, then you stand a chance to get 2x ROA. And if you are able to get a 2x ROA after testing with a 50,000 or a 1 lakh rupee ad spend, then you can sustainably scale. But if you're not able to achieve that, you may have to choose marketplaces. There are different kinds of products. For products with ticket sizes below 500 rupees, marketplaces will be a first choice. And for products that are super expensive, conversational commerce is what will work, because nobody's going to put their credit card and buy a jewelry worth 25,000 rupees if you're selling jewelry online. That requires trust, and that requires a conversation before they make the transaction. If even anything is complicated, that requires a conversation. But otherwise, for a bootstrap brand, if you get great ROAS, go to performance. Otherwise, start with friends and family or influencers and use marketplaces as a platform to grow your brand and business. So that would be my answer to you, Kaveri. Abhishek, before we get into the other questions that people are asking, what kind of learnings have you brought in from your digital marketing and performance marketing experience by spending 30, 40 crores? And what do you see other D2C founders will find useful out of them?
A few things I think as part of perspective is something which I've been able to learn. I've thrown my first Facebook ad in the year 2015 or 2016 as a dropshipper selling products from China, and have been able to see the entire trajectory of the CPMs to grow from say a 50 rupees to a 250 to 300 rupees. Realities do keep changing on a regular basis, and we will not be able to make an assessment of what is going to happen say 6 months later. But one thing which remains very solid and stagnant is the fact that Facebook in a sense purely works as promotion, and we need to attribute it that way. There are obviously growth hacking techniques which we should always follow. Few very strong KPIs we should always look at. Let's say, for example, when we are testing out creatives and copy and looking to test out the kind of direction in which we want to advertise, let us not obsessed with ROAS, because generally ROAS obsession or ROAS culmination will only happen after an initial amount of push through from the brand end. This is something which is also being mentioned by Facebook in multiple setups, where they want you to have a minimum threshold of activity being done from your ad account side, and only then will you be dependent on advertising as a medium to generate direct revenue. And this is something which I have been able to see that, earlier, at least 2 years back, if I remember correctly, a lot of brand owners used to not have that kind of perspective. They used to think that, if I have a product, if I have good branding, and if I have good placement, I will just go to market, throw some ads and get a 3 to 4x ROS. But today what has happened is that not only has the infrastructure and ecosystem evolved, but the consumer has also evolved. Today, I will not be able to tell a consumer, click on this button and ask them to click and expect them to click on the button. They are very much educated. They are very much spoiled for choice, and they are very much concise in terms of what decision making they will engage in. So we need to speak to our customers using those engagement setups only. And at that point of time, understanding how the Facebook ecosystem works, what kind of users do come into the setup, and how you will be able to engage with them is something which is very important. A brief example which I will be able to give you was that earlier, even even top of funnel ads which run to say unengaged audience or the coldest of audience would be able to generate good ROA basis purely on the fact that consumers were very click happy and limited amount of choices were there in the market, plus CPMs were manageable. Today, if we are looking at a 250 rupee odd CPM, that is 5 times more than 5 years back, which essentially renders the ROA by at least 5 times over. And the same AOV, the same infrastructure of advertising is still going to maybe implemented. So we are directly cutting ourselves down by at least 80% in terms of our revenue growth. So what I've been able to make an assessment of while having, managed so many ads is that although the core essence remains the same, we need to be much more agile and much more lean in terms of our, setup, as well as have a long-term expectation towards what we are going to have from our advertising platforms, so that we can build across the spectrums over it. There are multiple platforms today. You can engage with them using WhatsApp. You can engage with them using push notifications, Google Ads, YouTube, and your own social channels. So let us not consider.
Wait 1 second. That is a lot of information going to the people who are taking part in our webinar for the first time, Abhishek. So I would like to throw some key highlights from what Abhishek has shared, and I will let you also speak once again. Excuse me. So CPMs have grown 5 times. Point number 1. Customers are spoiled for choice. Point number 2. Making the life of a D2C founder more miserable. To put it in simple words, right? So making it extremely challenging to scale up a brand from 0 to 1 compared to 3-4 years before, right? So this is the summary of what I hear.
But there is
And
definite.
also yeah, that is of course definitely opportunity. And another thing you covered on is the different channels with which D2C founders could access their customers, not just paid marketing. WhatsApp is like the blood of India, right?
Yeah.
India breathes in WhatsApp. It would be, an understatement even to say that. So see and understand how you can build a WhatsApp automation today. Businesses like Wati, Business on Bot, Gala Box, and Quick Reply. Multiple people have come up with integrations on sales, Shopify, and WooCommerce. So that is definitely one thing you can explore. Multiple brands. I've been a big fan of the Auric drinks WhatsApp blasts that they send frequently, uh, which you can follow and learn from. We learn a lot from other D2C brands and implement them within our products that we are trying to sell. So let us look into a couple more questions that we have. Thank you, Rajat, for asking how important is Google Ads in today's time. Google Ads has always been very important and is continuing to be an important part. If you could, if you could operate in a market that has a lot of search traffic and inbound interest, and if you're operating in a market that has intermediate to less competition, then you should be on Google Shopping Ads and optimize your shopping ads to appear in the top 1, 2, or 3 positions. But again, the image and display there and the price points will govern the click-through rates. As they land in the landing page, your brand and how it comes across to the customer will make the customer choose between whether he's going to buy yours or the 3 other URLs that he has clicked on Google. And when it comes to video advertising in YouTube and also the banner display advertising, the dynamic ads, it's about setting it up, building it up until it has enough data, and then expecting conversions and traction from it. One small hack on benefiting from Google Ads would be to make a list of all the popular YouTube videos uh, of people who are key opinion leaders in your category and niche, and only put your video ad in those videos. So whoever watches these videos or these channels will get your ad and bid for them. You should be able to convert a good chunk of them if you're doing a product that's extremely relevant to what that author is speaking about. So Ajay has asked, what should be the initial objectives and milestones of a D2C brand, and how much budget should be thrown for brand building and performance marketing? This is again very subjective. Uh, if I'm starting a brand with nothing, I have to start with nothing. If I am an entrepreneur capable of getting 10 crores in funding, then I start with 10 crores, right? So if you're starting with nothing, your approach has to be more marketplace and influencer marketing led and word of mouth, and continue to build for the PMF. And if you get to a stage where you have enough traction and you have raised your round of capital, then you have to start investing in brand building, performance marketing at that time. So that is enormous opportunity, but it's also become enormously challenging for founders to create and build a D2C brand. So this is why I've done a post day before yesterday on asking people not to look at the competition and ask people to look at the consumer. If you really look at the consumer and the consumer's lives, you will understand what are the pain points he faces and be able to come up with something that will at least live for a year or two, where you will be one of the very few players addressing for that, right? And closely watch out and look at what is happening in the United States. Whatever happens there will happen here eventually, whether it's your Plix or your Be Minimalist. It's all happened in the US a few years ago, right? Go to Amazon.com and go to Thrasio.com, figure out the brands they're acquiring and figure out the brands that are in the top 100 in Amazon, and see which one is scaling up fast that has launched recently, making a list and doing your study on what could be functional and useful for the Indian consumer. And if that is something related to what you're building, try to learn from it and implement that in whatever you're building.
Yeah.
And brand building and performance marketing, if you ask as a split, I would always call it 50-50. Do not aim to get a transaction out of every advertisement you make. you have to build a relationship with a customer. Today, they are spoiled for choices. So build your sequence in such a way that you show an UGC and you show the benefits of your product and you show the use cases and retarget those who watched all this 1 or 2 or 3 videos with an offer to get them converted.
Yeah,
So,
I had a small tip to share if it is possible. Basically, in addition to what you had mentioned, I wanted to mention to Ajay that, the best way to actually ensure that you are able to map out your initial objectives is to keep a track of almost a few of the KPIs which are going to be numerically denoted. Things like how many sessions are you drawing, what is the CTR of your ads, and how much are you spending, what ROI you're getting, what is the gross revenue you're drawing, and what is the percentage of returning customers. Try to have a Google sheet where you're able to basically map that on a week-to-week basis. Don't go for crazy KPIs where you want your CPAs to be 300 rupees right from 1200 rupees. That is not going to happen. If you're going to start off with a 900 to 1000 rupees CPA, that is the benchmark CPA which you are able to do basis on the competencies which you have, the product which you have, and the market which you're catering to. So then just the objective of improvising on that by 10% every fortnight is also a very good number to reach to. And if we are able to see an improvement in that on a regular basis, then we are going in the right direction. So that is something which we very strongly follow and has been able to give good results.
Wonderful, Abhishek. That's a good tip. And Karthikeyan has asked, how effective is ROAS in the initial stage of customer acquisition? Do highly funded D2C brands care about ROAS? So whether you're a funded brand or a non-funded brand, you have to care about ROAS to the extent that it justifies the lifetime value you're able to derive from a customer. If you are a brand that's into the market for 3 years, you know how much money you are able to make from one customer that you acquire. Let's say if that is 5,000 rupees, the brand can go as far as spending 2,000 or even 3,000 rupees to acquire a new customer, because their COGS will be less than 30%, and they are profitable in the life cycle of a customer over a period of 2-3 years. And even if the first transaction value is only 1,000 rupees, the brand will go as far as investing 2,000 or 3,000, because they are anyway sure of getting 5,000 rupees from a customer on average, provided that the retention rates continue to be as it was. So as a new brand, if you are super creative and smart with performance marketing, you might get good ROAs. But any campaign that has good ROAs, I've operated in 3 industries in my career as a digital marketer. In 2007, 8, 9, travel agencies and operators like Yatra, Make My Trip, and Expedia used to get a 4 to 5x ROA on their agency commissions they got from hotels and flight operators. Then eventually it started flipping the other way around in 2011-12, where they had to spend 4 times more than what they would make on their first transaction. Then I saw it repeat once again in the web hosting industry, when Endurance International started picking up brands worldwide and the affiliate program was shooting up and gaining prominence. Web hosting customer acquisition has gone up from $20-$30. The average revenues used to be $100 to $150 for any shared web hosting company, which used to be popular in those days, like HostGator, JustHost, Bluehost, or any of the EIG brands, or even GoDaddy for that matter. That's more familiar of a name for everyone. Customer acquisition costs in the hosting industry shot up to $300, with the revenue being only $100 on the first year, or probably even $50. And then people would renew them at 100, 150 after 12 months, right? So that is again happening in India all over once again in the D2C space. If you are getting a 4x ROA today, great, enjoy it, increase your spends as much as possible and capture as many customers so that your blended ROA can be that much in the long run, and work on your retention playbook to build your brand into a very strong household name, right? Your packaging can also be a differentiator that drives your customer back to your brand and make them love yours. So ROAs are definitely important, but it's not the end of the world. If you're getting only 1x ROA, that does not mean you have to shut the brand and go off. That only means you either have to raise money or you have to prolong your period of scale uh, of being a small brand to growing into a 50 lakh, 1 crore MRR brand. It's going to take you much longer. And if anyone else who is taking part in this Solve for India webinar, please do feel free to ask any question and share this webinar with your friends or anyone in your network who would benefit from this, learning about D2C and different things that you as an entrepreneur can do to unlock the potential of your brand and business that you're building for India. So last question that we will answer today is finally for brands which has a higher unit cost and lesser frequency of purchase like D2C selling mattresses, jewelry, CRR would be lesser rate. In that case, how would the strategy be? What will be the metrics to track? I would have Abhishek take that one.
So this is something which has been as part of question which has been asked to me for a lot of times. Now we need to factor in one very important factor over here. Mattress for that matter, I will be able to be attracted to a new brand and introduce myself to the brand, but I will only buy it when I need it. Whereas there are other products which are directly impulse purchases. So this product essentially something which is going to be of a higher unit cost or consumption, which is going to be say for a longer duration of time, generally are going to be products which you buy when you need it. So in that case and matter, generally brands need to employ not a lot of performance marketing, but a lot of brand building activities so that when I'm thinking of a mattress, I will be thinking of brand A or brand B. That is the motivation which I will need to go to the market using that. Obviously, there will be KPIs which we will be able to follow, looking at the kind of engagement we are getting on our online portals, social portals, have long sequences of emails where we will be able to attract consumers and keep ourselves in their knowledge and know-how when they want to convert, because this is not really an impulse conversion basis on the fact that I want a mattress, I will take a mattress because just I got an ad today. But it's a long-term game, but it's a very fruitful game when it is the case.
Wonderful, Abhishek. That sounds good. And in the case of jewelry, you just strike at one customer who will spend several lakhs altogether, and continue acquiring until you find that one customer, right? And I think one of my ex-team members went on to run digital for Bluestone, managing spends north of 20-25 crores, getting massive ROAS, right? So jewelry is a big game.
And jewelry also entails an industry which requires an extreme amount of trust. So once again, brand building becomes a very strong aspect for the entire ecosystem to function in.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So Rajat has asked, can you speak a little on influencer marketing hacks? The only hack to influencer marketing is to work with as many and figure out the 5 or 10% of them who will end up producing meaningful results for you. And like how customers are spoiled for choices, now influencer of any size is approached by a Nykaa or your Cred or Myntra, and they do yearly contracts where they spend lavishly and give lakhs of rupees. So no influencer wants to work with any brand unless they really associate themselves with the brand and they have a direct incentive of promoting that brand. So start offering commissions to all the influencers promoting your product and give attractive gift kits and make friends with some of those who you think will really be influential in taking your brand to the consumers. That's a good start.
Niche product line and niche brand owners will be able to leverage out of niche influencers, specifically in spaces which have very high CTR for influencers. Example, food, example, travel, and example, things which are going to require people to have certain basis expertise on, like nutrition, fitness, and things like those.
Wonderful. And Abhishek,
yeah,
when entrepreneurs running D2C brands come to you instead of you going to them, what are the 3 questions they ask you? And what are the three questions they should ask any agency before choosing one?
One of the most important things which I think we very frequently get asked is the fact that, how many brands we've worked with or how much management we've done over the course of the time, which is a very pertinent question to ask a lot of times for brand owners, because they want to hand over their reins onto someone who's experienced in the entire ecosystem and very fairly to do so. I have been able to see a very strong and very positive evolution of founders in the D2C space, where they are now approaching agencies, us or anyone for that matter, with a lot of thought process behind it, in the sense and manner where they are looking to establish a positive relationship with the agency, so that the growth strata is something which is shared between both the agency as well as the business. Because at the end of the day, what happens is that the product as well as the product setup becomes less than 10% in terms of its entire value contribution to on an everyday basis, and digital marketing becomes more than 70 to 80% in its value contribution. So at that point of time, it is relatively very important that the partners who they affiliate themselves with are also well versed with the kind of establishments they set up in. Additionally, one more thing which we have been able to see we evolve very positively with D2C founders is the fact that they are also very, very well self-educated in the entire digital marketing ecosystem, whereas earlier it was not the case. Earlier it was a case in point where I have an X amount of budget, I'll give it to an agency and they'll give me X into 3 or X into 4 in return. Now, the ball game has changed. People are also now starting to understand that the process does not work that way, and everyone needs to function in a very holistic manner. The kind of questions I probably want founders to ask me would be to ask me for a year-long plan, or ask me for a 6-month-long plan, rather than a chop and change 1-month-long plan or a 2-month-long plan. Because honestly speaking, if it is going to be your agency, or if it is going to be your marketer or your marketing consultant, they will take at least a fortnight or two just to be able to understand the business as well as the product. And then the process of actually building starts. And marketing as an entire ecosystem is something which essentially is a stackable setup, in a sense and manner where today, if I do 2 right steps in my marketing ecosystem, then the third step will stack up over it and not be something which will replace that. And once the stacks coming into position, actually, once they become a point, they come to a point of critical mass, is when you will start seeing fruitful results. So that is something which very importantly, I'm starting to see and hoping that, business founders, D2C founders are going to have as part of their arsenal when they're reaching out to agencies and agency owners.
Wonderful, Abhishek. And as a part of this solving for India, if you find this live webinar useful and share it with your community, we are planning to take one person to Maldives. Whoever wins this, Abhishek, you in?
Absolutely.
To do a Maldives trip with the winner who shares this the most.
Absolutely.
Or no, well, that was an April Fool's joke. So we will ship our gift kit containing all the products that we have built for one person who has participated in this webinar, who shares it with their community and who has been engaging in this. Please suggest what is the next webinar you want me to host. I'm connected with and I interact with large influencers, investors, and marketers as a part of my journey at SuperCluster, where we are building D2C brands and acquiring other D2C brands that we will be scaling 10 to 20x in the next 1 or 2 years. And we are focused on the health, wellness, and beauty. However, having been a marketer, we understand the whole ecosystem of D2C and can provide our advice to you if you are looking out and seeking for help for free of cost. We are here together in building and solving for India. Spread a word about Solve for India and be the catalyst, be the guiding light to everyone in your community, and look outside of the box to emerge and evolve as a winner in your space. I would like to wish every one of you all the best. And thank you so much for joining in this webinar. There are 3 prerequisites if you want to get a ticket into winning a gift kit with all of our products. We have more than 10 SKUs right now of awesome products. The sale price of all of them would be worth much more than 10,000 rupees. Please type in the webinar LinkedIn as a comment and share this in your LinkedIn feed, and ask one question or share one tip, or suggest what is the next webinar and the questions we should be asking in the next one I am hosting. Thank you all once again. Have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. My special thanks to Abhishek for taking part in this very first webinar I am hosting, where I want to solve for India and he wants to. And do you also want to? Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.